Sidney, if you can hear us, great to talk with you tonight.
Yes.
How you doing? And good talking to you as always. I want to start off with just the ruling. The biggest news out tonight is this Pennsylvania ruling from the federal district court judge. What do you make of that?
Yes. Well, each of the district court judges has their own particular perspective on things, and I think that judge was appointed by President Obama. We really don't expect to win a lot of the district court cases, but ultimately the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court will have to get it right. We're very clear on the law and the facts on multiple issues, and we haven't even begun to present the big fraud case yet that I am still working on. And it's going to be a blockbuster.
I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, I mean, you guys had the news conference this week. There was a lot of compelling stuff in there. It sounded like you guys were making progress going down a road of investigation, but as I think anybody understands, when you're trying to lay out a case, it takes time to find out what you have. You had a bit of a rub with Tucker Carlson this week, who basically said you didn't have any evidence when they asked you to come on. What is the truth of the matter there? Because that made a lot of news.
Oh, yes. Well, he sent me some very abrasive and disrespectful emails or text messages, and I responded politely, offering him a different person as a witness who could explain it. I simply didn't have time to do it then, and I sent him a copy of one of the compelling affidavits that we have in the case. And apparently that wasn't sufficient for him. He was having a little bit of a tantrum. But I didn't see or hear what he said, and I haven't had time to listen to what he said after that. I'm just proceeding on my course of getting the case ready to prove in a court, which is where we prove cases of law, not in the media.
What is your timeline as you look at this? What's the timeline you think before you can put out some of this evidence that can really, if you want to shut the media up, or they say that you guys have nothing, when will you have some of this stuff that's this hardcore evidence in paper and writing?
Well, frankly, the affidavits we've already introduced are hardcore evidence. They're firsthand testimony of witnesses who saw how and why the system was created and how it worked to accomplish the objective for Hugo Chavez. There are people who saw ballots being destroyed. We've got evidence from people who saw fake ballots being created. We've got all kinds of different evidence, and then we've got the statistical and mathematical evidence that's absolutely irrefutable. I mean, a coin doesn't land on the same side when you flip it 186,000 times. You can't just inject 86,000 Biden votes and expect anybody to believe those are real, and they're not. No matter how you analyze the statistics, whether it's the predictive model or the actual data as it comes in, it doesn't hold water. And we've got other testimonial evidence that appears to be coming in now to indicate the Democrats literally added 35,000 votes to every Democratic candidate to begin with.
35 in any particular state, or you say 35,000 where?
We've got it definitely all over one state, and I would be willing to bet it happened everywhere.
And when you lay all this out, and you're going to do this in court, do you have what you think is irrefutable evidence that will make up the minds of millions of American people?
Well, the burden of proof in court is only a preponderance of the evidence. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the criminal standard. But frankly, with everything we've got, these should be criminal prosecutions at a significant level for fraud and conspiracy to defraud provable beyond a reasonable doubt. There are hundreds of thousands of people in our criminal system right now in prison who were convicted on far less evidence of guilt than we have here.
Sidney Powell, I want you to react to something that seemed this Republican senator from Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, just said in reaction to the district court judge's decision. The district court judge is someone who's very close to Pat Toomey. Senator Toomey says that President Trump has now, quote, exhausted all plausible legal options to challenge the result of the presidential race in Pennsylvania. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all.
Can you explain why the senator's wrong?
To fight.
Can you explain that? Why is the senator wrong?
Well, he's wrong because Pennsylvania was one of the hotbeds of many varieties of fraud and criminal acts that the Department of Justice, frankly, should be in there prosecuting. And we're going to dump a whole lot of them into evidence in our our fraud case that we're going to file in Pennsylvania.
Why do you think the Justice Department isn't being more aggressive in following up on what you see?
I think the Justice Department has known about this issue for a long time and turned a blind eye to it.
Why though?
I wonder how much the CIA actually had a role in starting this kind of program to begin with, to use on other countries.
Why would Donald Trump's Justice Department not be interested in this?
Well, I wish Donald Trump had as much control over the Justice Department as people think he does. It's taken on a life of its own, and I don't think even Bill Barr has the control over the Justice Department that he would like to have, because there are so many lawyers in so many different places doing whatever it is they want to do and ignoring the standards and practices that historically created the Justice Department to seek justice and not convictions. I mean, I wrote a book about that back in 2014. We've been on this increasingly bad path for decades now, and it's done nothing but get worse because nobody's told the truth and stood up for the truth. But Americans are now. They're livid about this, and they could see it. Everybody saw it election night. They saw votes being subtracted from President Trump and appearing on the Biden side of the scale. And that's exactly what this Dominion system was designed to do. And we have eyewitness testimony to its entire creation for that very purpose.
There have been warnings about this system. We were talking about it earlier, Sidney. I mean, you had Senators Warren and Klobuchar that made a big stink about the 2018 midterms, saying that they don't trust Dominion, that they saw evidence that votes could be switched using these systems. These are Democrats who ran for president. What I don't understand is how does this get ignored? I mean, this is a nationwide, this is a democracy shocking scandal, if it is true.
It is.
And it's so big, I can't even wrap my head around it. I just wonder, how does this happen?
Well, that's exactly how it happens, because it's so big, nobody wants to wrap their head around it. Nobody wants to untie all the little knots that go into it. But we have to if we're going to be a constitutional republic. This cannot go on. Our votes must be counted fair and true. Every legal vote is entitled to be counted, and every illegal vote nullifies the vote of an American citizen and our public will of we the people. It's absolutely counter to everything this country was founded on. So we have got to get this fixed now. I can't unsee it. I'll tell you that. I certainly cannot unsee what I have seen. And I'm going to make sure everybody else knows everything I've seen too. Because we've got to hold our government institutions accountable and do better than this by each other. And it does cut across both political parties. It cuts across generations now, or at least multiple decades of this kind of corruption that's got increasingly more sophisticated.
Has anybody given you...
Just smudge the edge of a ballot and stick it through the machine, and if the ballot would be rejected. But now they can literally drag and drop hundreds of thousands of votes wherever they want them.
I mean,
everybody knew when they bought the system, and that was one of the features of the system. We've caught people lying now and saying that things that happened that ran people out of voting areas, and we've got tons of evidence. It's so much, it's hard to pull it all together.
How big of a, if this happened, how big of a conspiracy, how many people would have had to have been in on something like this?
Oh gosh, probably thousands, including the people running the machines at each of the polling centers. We know, for example, that one of the higher ups of Dominion went to Detroit the night of the election to handle things himself. And we also have evidence that there were any number of VPN lines open to the internet for foreign actors meddling in it.
Has anybody given you an explanation that as to why they had to turn the machines off? You talked about how the machines got turned off.
Yes,
and then
our witness from Venezuela who saw it all created and how it worked said that he knew as soon as the machines were turned off in those key states, it was because we the people in voting for Trump in a landslide election had essentially broken the algorithm that had been pre-programmed into the machine. So they had to stop counting in those states and areas and backfill the vote with fraudulent mail-in ballots or whatever means they used to do it, whether they just injected numbers or trashed votes for Trump otherwise and changed the numbers. I don't know exactly how they did it right now in each spot, but that's essentially the way it worked.
Let me ask you about the state of Georgia. Obviously,